We'll start with Heidi. What are some of the important special education issues that the board has recently addressed or is likely to address in the near future?
So one of the big issues that came before the school board last year is the issue of disproportionality. Our district was fined for having a large number of African American and Latino kids in special education. So I'll address this issue in a multi-pronged approach. First, as an educator, I know that early intervention is the best way to improve outcomes for students. I want to ensure that our Springboard for Kindergarten to Kindergarten program, which provides a high-quality preschool experience for any child that has never been to preschool, continues, because these early experiences can make a big difference. I will also support parent education programs to help parents become equal advocates on the IEP team. I agree that it's very nerve-wracking to sit in an IEP meeting and not understand the procedures or the roles. I certainly have sat there and wondered what I am asking for and what I can get as far as special interventions go. And so I want to make sure that our teachers are trained and supported with best practices around educating a classroom of diverse learners in all ways of diversity. So those are the three things I would address.
Camille?
In the last several years, it's interesting how in education, as with many things, there is a cycle of change. And when I earlier came on the board and there was a move toward inclusion, and there was some dispute about whether full inclusion was the way to go or not. And CAC, in fact, sponsored a movie that was a great movie about the tensions in inclusion or not. We have been moving toward inclusion, certainly with the school board support. And when Holly Wade came into the district, this was a move that she wanted to move with as well. The board supported that. We're still working through the best practices in inclusion as well. Holly's right with regard to disproportionality. The federal government designated that there were too many kids of color in special ed. And the bright side of our response to that is that special ed, that there's more response to the needs of students in general ed. And so some of the best practices in special ed are being rolled into general ed as well, and there's a great deal of training around that. So those would be the two issues that I would identify.
Ken?
So I would also identify inclusion and disproportionality as important issues, and a third that I'll talk a little bit about is A to G, and in particular the implications of the fact that the school district adopted the A to G graduation requirements for our high school graduation requirements, so that kids who graduate from our high schools in Palo Alto are enabled to go to our public CSU and UC universities. And the question is, what are the implications of that for kids with special needs? And I think in order to answer that, we return to first principles, that we want an education that meets every child where they are and enables them to meet their full potential. And so the challenge is to make sure that we provide appropriate alternatives for children who cannot meet A to G requirements, and by going through a waiver process or by making use of their IEP to do that, but while also not falling into the trap of believing that just because a student is receiving special education services that they aren't able to achieve at a high level. My own daughter went on to an elite four-year college after getting special education services. That's why I've advocated for improving our high school counseling support in both of our high schools, but particularly at Gunn, because that's what our students need in order to do that.
Thank you. Melissa?
During my time on the board, our look at special ed has changed a bit. We've made a transition from extremely individualized, case-by-case decision-making that sometimes was delivered as special deals. And it wasn't fair, and it also wasn't efficient. It didn't share best practices across the district. And so now we're moving towards a more collaborative system that supports and challenges every child, and we put in some initiatives to help every parent be supported. We've made some advances in inclusion. If you've been at Barron Park or Duveneck, you've seen that we have inclusion kindergartens. If you've been at Greendale, you see that we now have an inclusion pre-K. And that's really important because when you start early, as everyone knows, the trajectory changes. We've also added some intensive programs, some therapeutic classrooms at Palo Alto High School and at Jordan. As was just said, we've changed our graduation requirements, but we've created alternative path for students that need that path. And it's systematic. It's not a one-off. We've also taken a look at disproportionality. And I look forward to us going forward and looking at how we use technology in the classroom so it supports students with special needs so we can differentiate more easily. I also think that teacher education has changed.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.